Good evening, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. My 12-year-old daughter asked me recently if I would shave my head for $1 million. I said, yeah, I would do it for a lot less than that. I asked her if she would shave her head for $1 million, and she said no. Really? Why not? Because money doesn't buy happiness, she said. Hair buys happiness. I had felt a moment of parental pride welling up in me when she said that money doesn't buy happiness, but I was at a loss as to how to respond to this. She was both tongue-in-cheek and absolutely serious. And I guess for a 12-year-old girl, hair is currency, and the exchange rate for cash is always going to be just a bit too high. So, in truth, she just said out loud what many of us actually believe in private, whether it's $1 million, like me, hair, like her, a new phone, a new app. We tend to believe that things will fulfill us, or perhaps that our achievements will reward us. Maybe if I get that promotion, maybe if I get approval from that person. We believe, and American culture helps us to believe, that we can, in fact, buy happiness. One currency or another. It's all just a transaction. In this week's Parshat Eikev, we get, at least on the surface, a different version of the same message. In this version, the money, the hair, the promotion, those are all types of idolatry. They won't work. But there is a currency that really will buy happiness, that really will guarantee well-being, and that is the keeping of the mitzvot. Here's the scene. The people are encamped at the Jordan, poised to cross over into the land. Moshe is continuing his speech to them, going over the rules one more time, reviewing all the wonders that God performed for them, lecturing them about their past mistakes. I picture the people rolling their eyes like a tween because they've heard this all before. But to Moshe, it's a message that bears repeating. Because once they're in the land, rehearsal is over. This is the real thing. And they're either going to keep the mitzvot and things are going to go really well, or they're not going to keep the mitzvot and things will not go so well. Moshe boils this principle down in a famous passage which became the second paragraph of the Shema. V'haya im shemoa tishma'u el mitzvotai. If you listen, really listen, to my commandments. The nourishing rains will fall, the crops will grow, you'll enjoy a wealth of grain and wine and oil. You and your animals will be well fed. But, hishamru lachem, watch yourselves, guard yourselves, that you don't turn away and serve other gods. Because then the skies will close, the rains won't come, the crops won't grow, and you will perish. I think some of us are really bothered by this idea of a divine parent rewarding and punishing. In the mid-19th century, the leaders of the Reform movement were bothered too. They found it so distasteful, so theologically blech, that they removed the second paragraph of the Shema from their Siddur altogether. It seemed superstitious, embarrassing even, to claim that God would give or withhold rain in response to our behavior. I mean, really, it's so silly to think that human actions could have any impact on the weather. I digress. But seriously, does life really work that way? Is it cause and effect? Can you buy happiness with the mitzvot? When you look around at our world, it sure doesn't seem like it. Good deeds often go unrewarded, bad deeds go unpunished. We know that sometimes the most loving, generous, spiritual people die young. And sometimes the biggest scum gets off scot-free. So if we read this passage, the second paragraph of the Shema, as a description of how the world works in terms of actions and consequences, it does seem superstitious and just downright inaccurate. But that's not what bothers me about it. In fact, even if things did work that way, it would still bother me. Even if God did reward the good and punish the bad, even if we did reap exactly what we sowed and the system worked perfectly and predictably every time, it would still be a painful notion. Not because our relationship with God would be superstitious, but because it would be transactional. It would be a business deal. I give you this, you give me that. God would just be a giant mechanism that cranks out the cosmic consequences. To me, a God like that is really not very different from no God at all. But I don't believe that that's the God that we encounter in Parshat Eikev. If anything, we find a God who resists transaction and insists on relationship. This Parsha is full of love, repeated declaration of God's love and blessings for the people, for the people's ancestors, for the people's children. Our instruction to love and serve Yud-He Vav-He with all our heart and all our soul. We're taught that a human does not live on bread alone, but on every utterance, everything that comes out of God's mouth. By the way, that quote is usually attributed to Rav Yehoshua ben Yosef, otherwise known as Jesus, but he heard it here first. We read line after line about the goodness and the sweetness of the land that God is giving the people, a land of wadis of water, springs coming out of the valleys and in hills, wheat and barley, vine and fig, pomegranate, olive, oil, and honey. It's a nurturing, nourishing place. And none of this is because the people earned it. Moshe warns the people against thinking that their good fortune is a result of their own actions. This is not a meritocracy, and it's not capitalism. He says, when things go really well in the land, which they will, when you build houses and eat your fill and the flocks multiply, you shouldn't say in your heart, my power and my hand's strength made this wealth for me. I built this. Moshe reminds them that it's Yud-He Vav-He who gives the power to make wealth, something we would all be wise to remember. All of this abundance is no payment due on a balance sheet. There's no exchange of currency. This is pure love. We find in this Parsha a pointed contrast between the transactional world of Mitzrayim and the relational world waiting to be birthed in the land. The contrasts are highlighted over and over. Don't recreate the cold, gold-driven world you left. You shall love the stranger, for you were strangers in Mitzrayim, and you know what it's like. If you find idols, don't take the gold and silver from them. pen tivakesh bo, lest you be ensnared in it, captivated by the pursuit of money. We're here to create a different world. Resist the transactional, insist on the relational. The land itself is different. And this is historically true. In Egypt, the land was flat floodplains, and they used irrigation to grow miles of monocrops, a lot like industrial agriculture today. They could arrogantly spin the fiction that they were not dependent on God or heaven's rainfall. The land was a machine that would continue to produce forever. Farming was a transaction. They exploited the land as they exploited the people. This is a cautionary tale for us. Ultimately, the civilizations that did this, especially Sumer and Mesopotamia, destroyed their ecosystems and became uninhabitable. By contrast, the land that is now Israel, Palestine, was hilly, and plants of all kinds depended on rainfall. You had to grow a little of this here, a little of that there, adjusting and readjusting, getting to know the soil and the seasons. Moshe tells the people, and I love this part, "For the land that you are about to enter and possess is not like the land of Egypt from which you have come, where you plant your seed and water it at your feet," meaning with an irrigation pump, like a vegetable garden. "But the land you are about to cross into and possess is a land of hills and valleys. It drinks water from heaven's showers. It is a land which your God, Yud-He-Vav-He, cares for. Yud-He-Vav-He's eyes are always on it, from year's beginning to year's end." We are called to stay in relationship with God, with the land, and with each other. This is a tall order, much harder than transactional living in a lot of ways. But the rehearsal is over, and this is now the real thing. This is our lives. And the payoff, if I can be so crass as to call it that, is promised right in the second paragraph of the Shema. Ve'achalta v'sava'ata. You will eat and you will be satisfied. In our culture, we often eat, but we're not satisfied. We consume, but we crave more. But here in this Parsha, here in the Shema, we are taught that through holy relationship, sava, we can experience enoughness. There can be more joy and less striving, more connection and less bottomless hunger, more earth healing, less extraction, more lasting meaning, less quick fix. Nourishment is available. It's all around us. We're swimming in a sea of love, but we can't force it. Resist the transactional, insist on the relational. When we take opportunities to practice this, it's delicious. And we do. Even my daughter, who wouldn't sell her hair for $1 million, once took an opportunity to give it away for free. The last time her hair was long, she had it cut short and donated it to an organization that makes wigs for children who've lost their own hair to chemotherapy. She felt great about it, partly because she liked the short haircut, okay, but also, I think, because she liked the feeling of giving. She plans to do it again in the future, because she has figured out that although hair may indeed buy some happiness, being in relationship with the world buys even more. So there may yet be hope for her and for me and for you and for all of us. Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.